the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10-4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Board Office Schools, on Cable Vision Channel 118, Verizon Fios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the Township Clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, June 10, 2014. The Board will take formal action on the payment of bills. Mr. Mara?
The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the board, or members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio and video recording devices, provided that the act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recordings will be considered private recording of the individual and in no manner represents the official record of this board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such private recording and completely disavows any future use.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Roll call.
Porcelli?
Here.
Prima?
Here.
Dunn?
Present.
Hopman? Lundin?
Here.
Singh? Silikowski? Weber?
Here.
Andriani?
Here.
Quorum exists.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance, please rise.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mara has informed me that there are three administrative changes.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that anything that is bold and yellow was not on the agenda that was sent home on Friday, so you're seeing it for the first time. For the public, it's the first time that they're seeing it.
Okay, thank you. Just as a note, so I don't forget, we had a discussion about graduation. We're kind of keyed in on middle school and high school. But if we could get representation somehow for the elementary school, I had asked Joanne Torres to make copies. I just handed them out to everybody. If there is one or two ceremonies at the elementary school that you could make, the moving up ceremonies, that would be really appreciated. If you could just let me know, or inform Mr. Mara, and he'll see if we can get somebody everyone. I know if you're working, most of them are during the day. There's two or three of them later in the evening. Thank you.
I'm scheduled for a federal jury duty that week, but it's one of those years where I call in, so I don't know. And I may wind up being available, and I'll be out to go.
Okay, thank you.
But I don't know.
Donna, I just want to make a note, because I'm looking over your shoulder, and I see that you have the schools listed, but some of the schools do not have their moving up ceremony in their building. So you might want to clarify that. I'm not sure.
I don't know where they all are.
Out.
The Grissom one says OVHS, but I don't know about the other.
But I know Madison Park, okay, they have on their OVHS. All right, it does say it. I didn't see it on there.
No, we're saying
Okay.
The others are out there.
Okay.
Schools?
It looks like I didn't see that additional one. So I was looking at that.
We don't need to approve where the graduations are, I don't think. Okay, approval of minutes. Right, recognition. I don't know if there's any discussion on that.
Okay.
We have a lot of championships, ice hockey, lacrosse, volleyball, etc. We have National Spanish Exam, I'm very nice with that. Mr. Simone? Any forward?
Well, this was a group of students who, former McDivitt students and current McDivitt students, who raised money for a McDivitt graduate student, Brian Radigan, who was hospitalized. He has since passed from his illness, but we still felt it was important to recognize the students who tried to contribute to better his life.
I don't know if this would be added to recognition, but is everybody aware about the national day? It's on France.
I sent out the letter to the board, so.
But is that something that's being recognized now or not?
So it's a possibility for them. They have to decide if they can raise the funds, but we're certainly supportive.
Superintendent's report, progress towards goals.
We're going to tie into that progress towards our Math and Focus program and this program going forward and the future of the program at our middle schools. And Dr. Jean Farrar will present at the going forward.
Going back to the marching band, it's going to be quite an enormous challenge to have them perform in that single number of 10,000 people collectively between the 50 bands of 200 each. It'll be interesting.
But it's amazing that we just continue the greatness.
Special committee reports, what were the special? You know, we have both of them.
We have the buildings and grounds, which is tomorrow night.
So Matt will have some for
Policy.
policy, policy the other ones.
And I guess curriculum and technology is on this one. And I don't think we put it out on that, so.
And if the board feels it necessary to sit and have a special meeting to longer explain the proposals, they do so, but as address those things
I just want to be clear, Dr. Farrar, you wanted to do the presentation?
Right, I wanted to just present the proposal.
It's just going to
to
present
them.
of information, and if you have any questions going forward, it's not into adoption, it's just keep the board informed. I asked her to be here tonight, because it is a shift in our delivery mechanism. I wanted to advise the board.
Okay.
Tonight, you're not doing this at the meeting, the regular meeting?
I was going to present it right now,
Okay.
if that's possible.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I could present it visually, or I have a handout. Did everyone get the handout that I had over here by the agenda?
You can
Thank you.
just shoot it to us. That'll be fine.
Okay, great.
Do you want to use an overhead or something?
It's not necessary. If we want to move along quickly, it's not necessary. I can, it's all the information that I would present here would be the same thing that would be sitting in front of you.
Thank you.
Excuse my back. I'll wait till you get this and then. Okay, I'll begin.
Wait, do you want to sit up here first so you can face everyone else?
I'll move on. I can sit right next to you. You don't have to. You sit right next to you? Okay. I'd like to share one. Thank you. Yeah, we want everyone. Okay, I might as well stand so you can actually see me. It looks like I'm sitting. Okay. Basically, this proposal was generated after conversation with middle school teachers, after the several workshops we conducted this past school year for Math and Focus. We've had 3 workshops and one final one that's coming at the end of June. And during those workshops, the teachers revisit what's going on now in the classroom because of the implementation is now 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This year is the full-fledged implementation at the middle school. So in reviewing the new program and comparing it to the traditional program that was in place, one of the suggestions made by many teachers, and I had each of the grade levels in separate workshops, and this recommendation came up across all 3 grade levels, that they wanted to revisit how we place students in the middle school in the tiered levels that we currently have. Now currently we have the 3 tiered levels that are on the top of the handout, where we have a regular, an enrichment, and honors level. And the way it's designed is that children are placed based on a diagnostic, based on their New Jersey S scores, based on multi-period grades, and they're placed in one of those 3 levels. Now, if they're placed in the honors level, if they're not recommended by the end of marking period 1 in grade 6 for that honors level, because it traditionally followed the Glencoe program, which is different than the Math and Focus, then that child would not have an opportunity to enter the honors level again until they enter grade 9. Because those two programs are so diverse, there was no way that a child would easily transition without losing information moving from one program to the other. So if a child was not identified early on, they couldn't enter the honors level. So that was a concern with the teachers, because they felt that middle school typically is a time that children mature academically, and they don't necessarily develop in time as they enter grade 6, and they develop over time over those 3 years. And they felt that we were preventing children for the challenge of an honors level because we were so rigid with our standards in terms of being part of the honors level. That went hand in hand with the Math in Focus implementation, because in looking at the Math in Focus, the rigors presented by the Math in Focus program actually in some cases are much higher than the traditional program, and we were finding children in the enriched level were actually doing work that was much more difficult than those children that were in the honors level. So taking those two things in mind, the teachers presented the suggestion, and we developed this proposal together, that rather than having 3 levels, that we now have 2 levels for math placement. And what this will allow is, most importantly, that if children are not identified entering grade 6 as an honors level student, they can be evaluated throughout that entire school year, and if a teacher sees that that child is able to do the more rigorous work, they can then move up to that honors level within that school year, because we're using the same program in both levels. So this allows that transition upward, and also in the other direction. If a child is in a situation where now the work is too difficult and they're faltering and they need to move back a level, we can allow that as well, because we're working within the same program. So basically, the proposal is that starting with this incoming grade 6 class, we would have in grade 6 a non-honors level and an enriched level. That enriched level would encompass what we would consider now honors and enriched level students. So it would be a larger group of students that would be able to do the more challenging work. And then throughout grade 6, as children develop and are able to assume the responsibilities of the difficult, more difficult work, teachers can recommend that they move upward, and that's going to be like a fluid motion, backwards and forwards, depending. So we are really answering the district goal of providing our children the opportunity to grow, to challenge them, to prepare them for the expectations of the Common Core standards, especially the expectations of the PARCC standardized testing. And we're offering that opportunity to all students at all times, and not just as soon as they enter the school year as a grade 6 student. So that's the recommendation. That's basically the main change, and it's for the better, because now we are addressing the needs of the students on an ongoing basis, as opposed to just an initial placement exam. Any questions? And I put in here the background of the change. I put also the current design versus the proposed design, and that it would be no cost to the district doing this, and the immediate needs, how we would have to support our teachers initially. And I know that in our conversation we met last week, Mr. Cividino, Ms. Kibler, Mr. Maranzoli, Mr. Rezes, we met, we discussed concerns. One of the concerns is that the first year of this design, the teachers would have to really focus on differentiating their instruction, because now they're going to have a larger group of students with a larger gap of learning abilities, but they would have to be able to address all those learning needs, because the group is not going to be as homogeneous as it is currently. So that was one of the concerns. But overall, we feel that this program can meet this challenge and serve the children better, because we're allowing them to grow without putting boundaries on their growth. Any questions?
Yes. I'm looking at the grade 8 here, where you have Math in Focus 3+, and then quadratics in Algebra 1. Currently, don't we have students entering ninth grade ready for algebra two?
What we have,
And geometry?
yes, what we have, if we, according to the current program, right now, our current honors 8th grade students are in the Glencoe program, which is the same textbook that's being used at the high school. And we compared the contents of the current book, which is more traditional, to the Math and Focus, and the one topic that's missing in the Math and Focus program, because it's fewer topics but digging deeper within each concept, is the quadratics. And we went over the pacing chart, and it was decided that we would be able to cover the entire curriculum with an honors group of students by March, and then just present that additional topic to supplement, so it would be the full curriculum of Algebra 1.
So when these students leave 8th grade?
They would be ready, if
For
they were,
geometry.
if they're in the honors level, they'd be ready for geometry and possibly geometry and Algebra 2, the way we have it designed.
And I have no questions about this term.
Do you have a recommendation of a different term?
Yeah,
And we
No,
can change it,
it's
because this,
a lot-
I share the same concern.
okay.
It sounds pejorative.
It's negative to begin
So
with.
should we just play, when we put it down, I was making a distinction between the two. This has not gone out to anyone. And certainly, I welcome feedback. No, should we put grade 6 math and just leave it generally grade 6
I
math?
was never under the impression you were
Call it general math.
No, we just regular grade, we call it regular grade 6 math. I made the distinction on this chart.
Oh, okay.
No. I made the distinction on the chart for you. It's basically going to be grade 6 math, enriched level, grade 7 math, honors level, grade 8 math, honors level.
And this will fold over.
Yes, absolutely.
And the year 7th grade teachers that have been doing the enrichment and the honors, they're okay with the math?
Yes, because we meet, when this design was discussed, it was discussed separately within each grade level, and then we have a collaborative meeting where we all meet, both middle schools, and we refined this proposal, and this is the input of all the teachers present in all 3 grade levels. And I also presented this proposal, and to get feedback from the high school teachers, and they were very, very supportive of this.
So, grade 6 is going to be the non-honor, which is just regular grade 6 math, and then an enrichment math, essentially, right?
Yes. And they're working out of the same textbook.
Okay, so when they go from grade 6 to grade 7, grade 6 enriched to grade 7, they'll be going to grade 7 honors, right? Now, and I guess because my brain is fixated on the 3 levels right now, where you have the regular grade 6, the enrichment, and then the honors. So if a student in the enriched level at grade 6 is not really succeeding very high in enriched, would they get put back into the non-honors in grade 7, and would it almost be a repetitiveness of what they did
No,
prior to?
because and that's a good question. No, because they are working all within the same book. So in grade 6, they're working in course 1, both levels. Grade 7, they're working in course 2, and grade 8, they're working in course 3. And that's what allows that transition between the 2 levels easily, because it's the same textbook. It's not that they're going to see a different textbook. They're just going to be required to do perhaps work that's not quite as difficult for them. So let's say, for instance, a child who's in enriched in grade 6 and doesn't, at the end of marking period 4, doesn't do well and struggles, then that child would be considered for grade 7 math, not the honors level. And contrarily, the child that's in the grade 6 regular but performs very well and may not have gotten into enriched by the end of that year could be considered for honors.
And then they wouldn't have missed a beat, though. They wouldn't have been. They won't be going into grade 7 honors, kind of where they're missing something that grade 6 enrichment might have.
No, because within grade 6, it's the standards and the Common Core for grade 6. They're just doing more challenging exercises, but the concepts they're learning are the same.
What happens to the pool of students who are right in the middle, who could do very well, but when put into an honors class, they're not going to do as well? Right now, with the 3 degrees, regular, enriched, and honors, you have that moderate, challenging course. Now you're going to try to group them in enriched or non-honors. And I feel that personally there's going to be a group of students right in the middle who's going to find the honors too challenging and the non-honors not challenging enough. So what happens to that middle group of students?
Well, this design actually mirrors what happens at the high school, because at the high school we have the CP and we have the honors level. And we also have a level that provides support for those students that require additional, remediation. So we have what was now called this year the Elements course. It's the lower level. So this actually transitions well to the high school, as opposed to having the 3 levels, which is not existent at the high school, where you have 2 different varieties of the higher achievers. Now at the high school we have the honors and we have the regular CP. So now if a child is doing, let's say, not as C work in an honors level, and at the end of that 6th grade year, we may reconsider and say, you know what, let's have that child begin in a regular grade 7 math and support whatever that child needs additional practice doing, perhaps explanation, exercises, whatever. And if that child shows improvement, because certainly they must have shown the ability, having been placed in the enriched level, then we can move them up to the honors. And that's the beauty of this design, is that if the decision is made to move them down, it doesn't have to be permanent. Where the way it is now, it's you're in this level and you stay in this level, whether you're doing well in it or not. You're supposed to be an honors level student. So this is allowing, when all other support mechanisms do not work. I'm not saying if a child is poorly on a test, they move down a level. I'm saying if a child has shown effort, extra practice, whether they come and meet with the teacher, whatever, and everything has been put in place and that child still doesn't improve, then that child can move down a level. So there's that ability to strengthen those skills and have that child not struggle to the point where they're performing very low.
Okay, you had mentioned that you did move them from non-honors to enriched or honors. How's that going to work? Is that going to interfere with their rest of the schedule? If you wouldn't be able to go up and down?
Well, that's why we had the 2 middle school principals available when we had this conversation, because in their scheduling, that was one of the questions. And they actually said by having only 3 levels of math actually facilitated the scheduling process as opposed to hindering it. So they felt it actually would make it easier for them because they wouldn't have to have those 3 separate levels. So they were on board. That didn't come up as a concern in our conversation. And they realized that this movement would take place from marking period to marking period. And we don't expect that the movement is going to be a tremendous number of students, because if we place them well and thoroughly look at their skills entering grade 6, overall, for the most part, we've done a very good job, and the guidance counselors have done a very good job with the information, placing students as best possible. But as we know, students wake up, they decide they love math all of a sudden, and they work harder, and they have a teacher that inspires them, and so we really want to reward those kids.
Jean, since you're not, both one of us going to be working out of the same book, is there enough latitude for the honors kids to not go through that part of it? And is it going to be sufficient to support that whole thing for the whole year?
I would say yes, based on the feedback from the teachers, that the program itself has so much substance, and there's many exercises and activities in this program that the children never get an opportunity to cover in completion. So it does provide the A, B, C type of questions based on the child's performance. So the book certainly supports it, and we don't have any questions about that because there's a lot to it. Less topics, but a lot to each concept.
I understand. I'm sorry, go ahead. Nancy.
I was just going to say, so right now, a student that's in grade 6 and 7 that would be moving up to 7 and 8 next year, if they're enriched or in honors, they'll go into the enriched program next year?
Well,
or they're
This is
in
going to be
regular?
phased in.
Yes.
It's going to be
phased in. I have that in very small print underneath the second chart. So If a child is currently exiting grade 6 as an honors level student, they finished pre-algebra. So next year, they will, and they're intending on it, they'll be going into the Algebra 1 book that's being used at the high school. So they'll stay in that traditional program, and this will be phased in.
And there's no problem implementing it in 14, 15, even though it's June and we're presenting it in June, and September is just, you
In
know,
terms of teachers,
changing from the 3 levels to the 2.
in terms of the teachers in the middle school, they're ready. In fact, again, they're the ones that requested this change. We had conversation with the principals. One of Ms. Gibbler's last meetings, that we had all the principals around. I think it was one of the budget meetings for the textbooks and so forth. We presented this to them, and we asked them for their feedback. They gave us their feedback. In fact, Dr. Ferry actually wrote an email, and he asked his colleagues, you know, what do you think? And their concern was, because the first proposal from the teachers was that there be no level in grade 6. And that was a concern because we felt, especially the elementary principals, some voiced that they liked the levels being available for students who were their higher achievers to be rewarded for that, for their performance. So we listened to that, we brought that back to the teachers, they discussed it, and that's why we created the 2 different levels here. So they're on board, and in terms of the parents, when both middle school principals had their 5th grade orientation for entering middle school, no information was shared in terms of this because I didn't yet get the approval, but nothing was also promised to them that they would be part of that other design as well. So we just talked about, this is the math program we're using, we kept it very general.
Now it becomes critical for differentiating instruction when you only have a 2-tier system. And that's going to be a bit more challenging for the teachers, in my view. And I think that students who are having difficulties are going to be a burden on the rest of the students, because differentiating instruction is critical, but a lot of times kids who are in the lower tier, you know, are the ones that do not benefit. So I'm concerned that there's only going to be 2 tiers, especially with elementary school kids coming out having 45 minutes or an hour a day in math, and all of a sudden they're going into a 45, 50-minute session where it's going to be more rigorous. It's going to be a lot more difficult. And not to have 3 tiers, I'm concerned about that.
I think you also had a valid point with they're not quite honors, but they're...
Right,
there's
there's
gonna be
this
a-
intermediary, you know,
Yeah, and
that's
that's a
a
very
pool of,
small
right,
line,
it's a very fine
you know.
line from kids coming out of elementary, and all of a sudden they're going to be 2-tiered, where you're going to be, you know, regular, and then you're going to be, you know, enriched or honors. That's a little disconcerting to me.
Well,
Especially at that
in my
point,
eyes.
the formation of life.
Right.
okay, so exiting grade 5, under the current program, they would be going into the 3 levels. So your top, let's say, your top 25% would be between those 2 levels, the enriched and the honors. And your regular group would be those children that didn't meet those requirements to enter those 2 levels. Those regular children are still going to be in that same group. What we did from the current program to the proposal is we took the enriched children and we combined them with the honors level children based on the placement criteria we followed from exiting grade 5, and we put those children together. So the regular level is really unchanged. What we did was we made the enriched and the honors, we put those together.
Consolidating them, but
Right.
didn't the enriched also have
But
problems
that
with
goes
staying
back
with
to
honors?
now that goes back to a comment made by the teachers that they were recognizing that the children that were in the honors level were actually not being exposed to the topics that the children in the enriched level were exposed to. The children in the enriched level are in Math and Focus. The children in the honors level are in Glencoe. The Glencoe is not as rigorous as the Math and Focus. That's what we're finding out. So we had enriched children explaining things to the honors level when it should really quite be the opposite. So that's where this all came about, where they were seeing children who were not considered for honors were actually doing more difficult exercises because of the way the program presented the information. So now you have the enriched and the honors combined.
Right, under Math and Focus now.
Yes.
Correct.
So that's better because now you're offering a challenge to the honors, and there's really, you're allowing growth for that enriched group to go beyond, I mean, they're showing growth, they're showing that they're doing, as well as in some concepts, the honors level children.
What will be the ratio of sections?
Well, right now,
Would it be 60% non-honors, 40% enriched honors?
well,
What's the?
right now, I can tell you the design right now. Of course, it's based on each incoming class, on the placement criteria that's used. But right now, in a grade 6 level, in Paul Sandburg, we have 2 honors, and then every team has an enriched. So if there are 3 teams, you have 3 enriched, and you have 2 honors. So that's approximately maybe 50 honors children. And we're working, with a head count per class of about 25. Okay, so 75 enriched, 50 honors. In Jonas Salk, we have 1 class of honors, so now you have about 75 children between the both schools that are honors. And again, you have the 3 different